Hey, and welcome to Dr. G Speaks. I am Dr. Kristen Guillory, and I am so very excited to help you experience a life of freedom, faith, and fun you may not even realize is possible. Listen, I know you feel held back, I know you feel stuck, and I know you are hiding. As a coach and the author of Look, Stop Hiding, How to Find Your Voice and Never Dim Your Light Again, you will get to listen to some amazing stories, receive some homework, that's the professor in me, and get some tools to help you live the life you deserve. It's time to quiet the noise and walk in the fullness of who God created you to be. It's time to stop hiding and start thriving. Together, we'll uncover your potential and ignite your journey to a fulfilling life, a life of freedom.
I'm sorry. Two of the most powerful words, yet two words that are difficult for some to share and even for some to accept. It was probably 12 years ago, and I was at church, and the service was over. And in truth, the message wasn't that great to me. I mean, I'm going to keep it 100. The message wasn't that great to me. And I remember gathering my things to leave, and I heard the pastor say, and if there's someone that you have wronged, you should reach out. And, there might have been different words, but I was immediately convicted when I heard the pastor say that. And three names immediately dropped in my spirit, immediately. And I remember thinking, but wait, these three people did me wrong. Like, why do I have to apologize? So I didn't really do anything else with the thought. I went about my day, and maybe a week later, I was convicted to send the first person a letter of apology. And it was a gentleman that I dated, and we had broken up, oh goodness, a couple of months prior, I believe. And I wrote the email, and I was going to leave it in drafts because I wanted to go work out. I was going to go to a kickboxing class, and I heard the Lord say, send it now. And even more than that, I couldn't move. Like, I literally was sitting on my couch and I could not get up. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to send it. Then there was a line in the email the Lord told me to remove. And that line said, and let me know when you get this. And God said, you don't need to know. That's a part of your control. You don't need to know. I just need you to do this. And y'all, that freaked me out. It freaked me out that, well, what if he doesn't get it? And what if, all that kind of stuff. And so I wound up missing the kickboxing class, and I sent the email. And essentially the email was stating an apology for not always fully hearing him when he would express, or I could tell he was tired. Because I was so caught up and focused on what I wanted to do. The letter also expressed gratitude for him, and that I hope one day he sees the amazing man of God he is when he looks in the mirror. That was the first one. The second email, that one was a little bit more difficult because I couldn't really figure out why I needed to apologize, because this person did me wrong. This person uninvited me to a wedding. This was someone that I grew up with from very, very young, and I was invited to their wedding. And when I followed up, I learned that I was uninvited, initially due to them deciding to make it a much smaller wedding, which I understood, but I was still hurt. Then the person called me the next day and said, I was so surprised to hear that you were hurt because I didn't think you cared. And I was dumbfounded. I was like, what? What are you talking about? We talked about this, and I brought this up, and we talked about all this stuff. I was so confused. And they said, yeah, but you never did this and you never did this. And I was just like, wait, what are you talking about? That's not fair. That's not fair. And you didn't really seem that excited when I told you I was getting married. And I remember saying to her, I am not an overly excitable person. And she said, well, maybe I forgot that about you. I said, you're only really going to see me extra excited if it's Boys to Men or my nephews, but I'm not an overly excitable person. And I was very upset about that. I was very hurt. In truth, out of every relationship that I've ever been in. I've only dated seriously one person, and out of all my relationships, family, friends, and the person I dated, that one was devastating because we went back to like 12, 13 years old, and I was devastated to not be invited. And I was also devastated that you didn't bring it to me. That, hey, if you had an issue, why didn't you bring it to me instead of just deciding to uninvite me to the wedding? So that apology email was very difficult. And then I was able to identify what it was I did. And I remember the Lord saying, even if the other person has done 99 things, if there's one thing you've done that you can apologize for, you need to apologize. And so I apologized. And here's why my apology was, I apologized that I allowed some disappointment to impact my reaction when you shared with me that you were engaged. I thought I hid it. I thought it was hidden, but apparently I didn't hide it as much as I thought. So what had happened was I saw on social media that she commented on something, and it was kind of a statement that she was engaged. And I remember being really hurt. I was really, really hurt. And I can't remember all the details because this is probably 2009 or 10. But I remember being so hurt that, oh my gosh, you're getting engaged and you haven't told me. Oh my goodness. So she was home for the holidays, and I go over to her house, and she lets me know about the engagement pretty quickly. And I'm happy for her. I'm cheering her on. I'm excited. We talk about the proposal. We talk about the guy who seemed to be a really, really great guy. And I was so happy for her. And my apology was I shared what happened. So here's what happened. I believe that I did not respond in the way that I really, really felt because I had some residual disappointment from seeing that you were engaged and it shared it with other people. And I didn't know, and I was hurt by that. And that hurt came across in my reaction to your engagement. And that's what that was. And so part of me, and I didn't add anything else to the apology. That's what the apology was. That's what it was. Prior to, my thought was, why didn't you bring this to me? Why didn't you give me the chance to talk about it? So that was the apology number 2. Apology number 3 was very difficult because I could not figure out what I did. Like, apology number 3 was a doozy. And this situation was a friendship. Again, this is all around the same time, 2011 or 12 or so. And well, let me back it up. What happened with the friend and the wedding, that was probably 2009 or 10, maybe. The gentleman I dated, that was around 2013. And this next story took place between 2011 and 12. All these apologies were in 2013. And I just couldn't figure out why I needed to apologize because this is someone who ended our friendship, and she stated all sorts of things that confused me, from you missed this particular event. And I remember thinking, well, no, I didn't miss it. I was there. I had to leave early because I had a family member in the hospital. Or you came to this event late. And I remember saying the day of my big conference that I host. So it was a lot of things where I was like, wait a minute, what? And it was just really difficult to figure out, what am I apologizing for? Because I'm being blamed for things that have nothing to do with me, until I sat back in humility and thought, but a lot of the pace of the friendship was on me. I planned things, I did things, I initiated things. And I remember being a little resentful of that, but I had to realize I created that habit. I'm the one who started. And so my apology to her was, I'm so sorry that I did not allow you to have a complete voice in this friendship. I apologize. Now, it doesn't mean that she was right in what she did by any means. And I was able to apologize, and maybe it was something different. And so for me, it was difficult. It was difficult to do so. It didn't mean that it wasn't necessary. And so your first question, my first homework for you all is there someone that you owe an apology to? Even if it's someone who did you wrong. Now, listen, let me be very, very clear. Let me be very clear. I am not talking about offering an apology to someone who has physically, emotionally, spiritually, sexually harmed and abused you. I am not talking about that. Okay, let me be very clear with this apology disclaimer. Okay, this is not, I am so sorry for leading you on and you may, give a reason for it. And that's why you harmed me. Absolutely not. So I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about you finding an area to apologize. No, no, no. Y'all got it? I'm not talking about that. And I know some of you are nodding your head right here. I'm not talking about that. Okay. So I know you may be thinking, well, what did they say? What was the response? So from the guy, I actually ran into him at the gym a couple of months later. And the first thing he said to me was, I got your email. Thank you so much. I'm not ready to be married. I said, whoa, Cletus. What? I said, no, that is not what I was talking about at all. What? And he was confused. He said, because I don't understand why you were apologizing. You did nothing wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. I said, well, thank you for that. I hear you. And there were times that we didn't need to go hang out because you were tired and because you cared about me so much, you weren't going to speak up, even though at some level, I think I did know. And so, yes, I do need to apologize. The second email, the response was, thank you for sharing your interpretation of what happened. And I remember being like, and we're done. And what do you mean my interpretation of what happened? But here's the thing, y'all. Offering an apology does not mean the person will accept it, understand it, or see it in the same way. And that's okay. And the third person responded and said, thank you to me for that. And I do have to also say for the third person, I remember giving a talk at an event. And while I did not say her name by any means, I used a story that was an example, honestly, to kind of poke fun. I mean, I'm just going to be very transparent. I kind of poked fun and used this story. And the thing is, I didn't know that she was actually at the event. And when I saw in a picture that she was there, I felt immediately embarrassed. And that's when I was convicted even more to send the letter of apology. I am so sorry for what I said at the event. And she accepted the apology on that end. And so for me at that time, I was able to learn some things about giving examples, and there was no excuse because in 2013, I was in a very raw place. We had just lost my 1-year-old nephew, Chase, and I was very sensitive to a lot of things, and no part of me used that in my apology. I'm grieving, so here's why. No, I accepted full responsibility. I accepted full responsibility for those things. And I wonder how many of you, there's an apology that you should give, even if it was a time because of grief that you responded in a certain way. And I know I did that as well. I remember responding to somebody during that season and it wasn't kind. In a couple of years, I reached out to apologize to that person and they accepted it. Oh, no worries at all. We've all gone there. We've all been in hard places. And I appreciate when grace is extended. So why is it so difficult to apologize? Why do people struggle with apologizing? One is ego and identity protection. For many folks, apologizing feels like admitting they're bad, not that they made a mistake. If someone's identity is built on being right, being strong, being the authority, being the good one, then I'm sorry feels like an attack on their identity. So they may defend themselves. You may hear things like, that's not what I meant. You misunderstood. You're too sensitive. Or I'm sorry if I did that. Those are deflection statements, not repairing statements. Another reason is fear of losing power. Some people believe apologizing puts them in the weaker position. They think if I apologize, they win. If I apologize, they'll use it against me. If I apologize, I lose authority. Ironically, the opposite is actually true. The strongest leaders, parents, partners apologize quickly because they don't need perfection to maintain respect. Shame is another reason that apologies are difficult for some. Shame says if I admit I hurt you, it proves something is wrong with me. So instead of apologizing, people justify, explain, blame circumstances, blame the other person, but shame blocks accountability. Shame blocks grace. Shame blocks connection. Shame blocks love. Another reason folks may struggle with apologizing is they were never modeled healthy apologies. Did you actually see adults in your life apologize growing up? Teachers, parents, grandparents, folks in your neighborhood. Did you ever see folks actually apologize? Many people grew up in homes where adults never apologized, mistakes were ignored, blame was shifted, punishment replaced repair. So they literally don't know what a healthy apology sounds like. And that makes me think of a couple of times I offered an apology and folks were just shocked that I did. I remember when I was a professor, it was one of my graduate classes, and I was saying something in class, and after class, I recalled a facial expression one of my students made when I was saying something. Or let me actually be honest, I did not recall a facial expression. I think I thought, oh my goodness, that might have offended her when I said that. That probably wasn't appropriate. And so I emailed my student, hey, such and such, I thought about today's conversation and I apologize for my words and any harm that was caused. I meant no offense and I apologize. I didn't hear back from her for a couple days. Actually, I didn't hear back from her for a week. And at the end of class the next week, it was a weekly class. And at the end of class the next week, she came up to me and she said, Dr. Guillory, I got your email and my roommate and I just stared at it. And I said, what? She said, my roommate and I just stared at it because I have never had a professor apologize to me. I didn't know what to do. She looked at me and said, what are you going to do? And I was like, I don't know. And she just said, I've never had a professor apologize to me. She said, no worries about what happened, but I've just never had that happen. And she was so startled. I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine and they said, sometimes I feel like, man, I'm putting forth this effort and I wonder golly, does she even see it? And I said, you know what? You're right. I agree with you. And I apologize for the times that I did not fully receive the care and kindness. And they looked at me with this look of shock. Like, wait, what? I was not expecting that. I was having another conversation with another friend of mine, and I said, I'm so sorry for the times that my pride and ego prevented me from truly hearing what you were saying in that moment. And they looked at me with a shock, like, wait, what? Huh? And so I know that it is rare, I think, for people to see others apologize. And so if you are a parent, an aunt, an uncle, godparent, teacher, mentor, grandparent, and more, it is so beneficial. It is so beneficial for children to see and hear you apologize. A couple of months ago, my oldest nephew, Jaden, and I were hanging out and we were at a restaurant and I think I said, hey, do you want to taste this food? And he said, yes. And I think I said, oh, I'm done. Here you go. And he tasted it, but he didn't like it. And so he kind of spit it back out into the bowl. And I got irritated, like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? I wasn't done with the food. And he looked and he was like, oh, I thought you were. I'm like, no, what? And he said, oh, I thought you were. And that night I realized I did not fully communicate. I think I did say I was done, but I didn't communicate that maybe I wanted some more. And so I called my nephew up. I dropped him off and I called him and I said, hey, Jaden, I need to apologize to you for my reaction at the restaurant. I'm so sorry for my reaction because I didn't communicate that I wasn't fully done. Even though my words said it, I did not communicate that well. And that wasn't fair for me to respond like that to you. I'm so sorry. And, he said, no, it's all good. It's all good. I remember one time my sister said something years ago, Jaden's mom. She said, there's nothing more humbling than having to apologize to a 3-year-old. And I'll never forget that statement. I think that is such a beautiful statement that it doesn't matter our age. It doesn't matter our position. if there is a need to apologize, that should happen. Another reason apologies are difficult for some is a nervous system threat. This is a big one that I don't think people really think about. When someone is confronted with harm they caused, their nervous system can go into fight, defensiveness, flight, avoidance, or freeze, silence. Apologizing requires staying regulated long enough to take responsibility. For many people, that's hard. And I have experienced situations like that. I've even told a few close friends, like, oh my gosh, so much can take place in a conversation if we were to have a conversation. And I remember a friend of mine said, yeah, but to have a conversation means that the other person would have to own something. And that's really hard for people to do, and I'm adding this context, which is why ghosting, I think, is more popular than it should be. I think one, it's difficult for some to actually state, this is what you did wrong to me. Right? Sometimes, and I don't mean if you try to do it multiple times, not listening and you have to leave for your own health, but just stating, hey, this is what happened. And sometimes saying that we must leave room for one, the person to apologize, but also to respond. And I think that's difficult. I think another difficulty is even saying I did something wrong. So people, instead of apologizing, just kind of run away. And I've actually experienced that a couple times over the years where I was done wrong and brought it up and there was nothing that was reflected. It was just kind of not a full ghosting, but just kind of a disappearance in a sense. And I do recognize, again, they are 2 words, but those 2 words are really, really difficult. And y'all, it's never too late for an apology. I was on a cruise and had a conversation with a gentleman who's 82. And he's been married to a second wife now for 40 plus years. He was married prior to that. And we were having a conversation. And after he heard me share a story, he said, after hearing you, I think I might have emotionally abused my ex-wife. And I said, well, you can still apologize to her. And he said, really? And, they're good. They're friends today. I said, you never know what that may do for her. So I encourage you to consider apologizing to her. There's also giving people the opportunity to apologize. So if someone has wronged you, in the word it says, if someone has wronged you, you take it to them. As someone who people over the years have not brought things to me, and things have just ended, that's been heartbreaking. One area of just heartbreak for me over the years is connections, whether professional and or personal connections ending over something I didn't know I did, or in truth, over something I never did. Something I never did. I've learned that about a couple of connections and I was blamed for something and literally I didn't do it. I'm like, I didn't, in my mind, like I did not do that. And the truth is, we all, me included, we all can see things and hear things from time to time through our triggers and through our wounds. And I've had conversations where I've literally said to myself and maybe even to them, I didn't say that. That is not at all what I said. And then the grace is understanding that they heard it through a different lens. I'm not excusing behavior, but there's an understanding. And okay, well, they were not able to see that, or that is how they did experience it because of what they are going through. My best friend and I had a conversation, it's maybe 10 years ago now. And she brought up, so 10 years ago, she brought up a conversation we had, let's say 4 years prior, maybe 3 years prior. And she reminded me of some things that I said that were frankly insensitive. She reminded me of some things I said that were not helpful for her in that moment of going through something kind of hard. Not kind of hard, going through something very hard. And when she brought this up, 4 years later, which is 10 years ago, when she brought this up, I immediately felt horrible. I immediately apologized. And that's all I could do. I am so sorry. I am so sorry that I said that. I am so sorry. And then a little while later, or maybe even on the same phone call, I think I said, thank you so much for continuing to be friends with me. Thank you so much for the grace that you extended to me. And we recently talked about that conversation a couple weeks ago where I brought that up and I said, girl, you extended grace to me. Thank you for that. And she said, wow, that was really lovely. I had not considered that I extended grace. And I said, it's grace because grace is unmerited favor. There was nothing that I did where I earned your forgiveness in that, but that was grace because what my best friend did for me is something that I strive to do for people is she remembered my heart. She remembered my essence. Yes, she was hurt by what I said. And she remembered, I know Kristen didn't mean any harm, yet this did harm me. She remembered my essence. And I think at times when people we know do things for us, I think unintentionally we forget their heart, we forget their essence, we forget that we want the same grace that we don't want to extend to the other person. And it's just fascinating how fast we can be done with folks. I realized over the years, one of my close to non-negotiables in terms of connection with friends and more so friends, but even business partnership is when you forget my essence. It's one thing to say what you said or what you did, I didn't like, it was harmful or whatever. But when you forget my heart, when you forget my essence, and that occurred with some of the original stories I shared about being uninvited to the wedding. Like, okay, if Kristen is responding in a different way to my announcement, I wonder why. I wonder what's going on. I'm not excusing me, but she forgot my essence, and that's hard for me to come back. Another situation occurred. I probably had 4 of those over the last 15 years where y'all forgot my heart and my essence. Bring it to me. Give me the chance to bring up a situation. And here's the other part, y'all. Sometimes if someone doesn't bring anything up, there's nothing for you to do. You leave it in the hands of the Lord. You leave it up to Him because sometimes you want an opportunity to apologize. But if it's not brought to you, there's nothing you can do. And if you're not led to do it on that end. So it's one end to use the words and say, I'm sorry. It's another to use wisdom and discernment where I know this group, I know these people, I know that situation is offended by what I did or what they think I did, and no one's bringing it to me. So you can either take it to them, pray about this, or you don't. So I want to talk about what a real apology looks like. Okay. A real apology has 5 components. It is acknowledgement. I see that hurt. Oh my gosh, that hurt you in some way. Number 2, it's ownership. You own what you did. I own that I caused that. I own that my words were harmful. 3, it's an expression of remorse. Here's where you say the words, I'm sorry. And it can go in a different order. I am so sorry that my words caused harm. I am so sorry that I did not communicate that I wasn't going to do that. And that caused tremendous harm. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that whatever it is. The 4th part is understanding the impact. I can see how that made you feel dismissed. I can see that. And the 5th is commitment to change. I will handle this differently. Okay. No excuses, no but erases the apology. I'm sorry you felt that way, but that wasn't my intention. Now, I have apologized and said, it is never my intention to hurt, yet I can tell that did hurt you, and I'm so sorry, right? Also, the if in apologies is also a little dismissive, also a little disrespectful. I'm sorry if you were hurt. I'm sorry if that didn't know. Remove if. Remove if. I'm sorry that I caused. I'm sorry that I did not do that. Remove the if, okay? There are different ways to apologize. There are different ways to apologize, and we can repair things in different forms. A direct verbal apology, a written apology, a behavioral apology, changing the behavior that caused harm. Example, if someone apologizes for always being late, then they start showing up on time. That's a behavioral change from an apology. Restorative apology, asking what would help repair this? So if you have ever hurt someone to a point where you're not sure about the relationship, ask, what could repair this? Is reconciliation possible? And at times, you can still apologize, but there may not be reconciliation. And that's okay too. I encourage you to make sure that you are seeking the Lord as you apologize. How can you get better at apologizing? Separate the mistake from your identity. Okay? It's not you are a bad person or a wrong person. It's I was wrong in what I said. Not a big deal. You can do it. Actually, it is a big deal. Pause the defensive instinct. When confronted, instead of reacting immediately, try, let me think about what you just said. Because here's the other thing. They might say something, one, you have no idea about. Two, that is not what you recall happening. Three, it's just confusing. But before it's defensive, just say, okay, wait a minute. Let me hear what you're saying. Okay, thank you for sharing. And so if what they're stating is not true, you can then say, no, that really is not what happened. Here is what happened. I think we need to discuss that. Get curious about the impact. Even if intention was good, impact matters. You can ask, how did that affect you? Practice accountability. I'm so sorry I interrupted you earlier. I used to send emails or text messages that would say, pardon this delay. So instead of saying pardon this delay, I'm now striving to say, I'm so sorry for my delay, instead of pardon this delay. Y'all, apologizing does not shrink you. It reveals the size of your character. Apologizing does not shrink you. It reveals the size of your character. I was leading one of my group coaching experiences, and one of my clients asked a question, and I cut him off because I thought he was going in a different direction. And later on realized, no, he actually was going in a different direction that was necessary. So since I publicly cut him off, I publicly apologized to him in our Facebook group. Hey, such and such, I apologize for cutting you off. Your question was actually on point and really valid. And here's the other thing. Even if his question wasn't on point and wasn't valid, I still should not have cut him off. Okay. A biblical lens on apology, James 5:16. Therefore, confess your sins to one another and pray for one another so that you may be healed. Y'all, take it to each other. I have often said this about apologies. So if you're willing to have an uncomfortable conversation for 7 minutes, you may be amazed at what can occur after those 7 minutes. Last year, I think I told 5, 6, 7 people, go back and get your friend. Go back and get your friend. And these were individuals who felt really bad because maybe they ghosted their friend, maybe they abandoned them, maybe they didn't return calls. And I said, go back and get your friend. They love you. Go apologize. I'm so sorry that I did not do this. I'm so sorry that I left you. I'm so sorry. Now, they may need some time, but go back and get your friend. Y'all, if you have any type of connection, family member, your partner, a business partner, a friend, and you know there's something that you did and you were maybe in a hard place. Maybe you were in a difficult place and you just couldn't respond. You couldn't show up. You can still go apologize. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that I abandoned you. I'm so sorry that I wasn't healed enough to be the friend you deserved. I'm so sorry I wasn't healed enough to partner. I'm so sorry that around that time I allowed what I was going through to cause me to isolate and abandon you. You know, whatever that is, I'm so sorry that you reached out to me so many times and I did not respond. I'm so sorry. Y'all go get your friend back. Go get your people. Okay? Go get them. An apology is so beautiful when it's authentic. Here's a caution around apologies. If there is something that someone brings up to you often, all the time, and you say, I'm sorry, but there's no behavior change, that actually means you are not sorry. You're not. Because if you are consistently, the example earlier, if you're consistently late and you can tell that bothers a person and, y'all get to the place late. Oh, I'm so sorry I'm late. I'm so sorry I'm late. If you were really sorry, you would change that. I remember having a conversation with a friend a couple years ago. And I said, well, I am so grateful when you express apology, what I realized is there was very little behavior change after the apology. And they said, what do you mean? And I brought up examples because, well, you still did this, you still did this, and you still did this. And I think that was not only an aha moment for that person to realize, oh my goodness, there wasn't behavior change. It was also an aha moment for me to realize, well, the words, I'm sorry, are beautiful and sometimes enough in certain situations. Sometimes when the behavior change doesn't take place, the apology feels a little hollow, if you will. So y'all, who do you need to apologize to? Do you need to accept someone's apology? Do you need to work on an apology? I want you to think about that. What do you need to do? Because apologies are beautiful. And even if the other person does not accept it, it has nothing to do with that. It's you being obedient. You have to move in the way that you are led to move, and God is telling you to move, because the Lord forgives us every day, right? And no, we're not the Lord. And what happened to the grace that we want others to extend to us that we don't extend to other people? Now, to the person who extends almost too much grace and you accept apologies when there's no behavior change, and the lack of no behavior change leads to harm, you can also accept an apology and enforce a boundary. Okay, let me be real clear there. You can accept an apology and enforce a boundary. You can accept an apology and there not be reconciliation. There could be an acceptance of an apology and reconciliation. There's so many combinations on that end. So be courageous and apologize well. Ask God to show you how to apologize and how to accept apologies. Okay? Deal? Y'all got it? All right. Ephesians 4:32. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as in Christ God forgave you. So maybe someone has apologized to you. Forgiveness in some situations is an everyday thing. Forgiving the person, forgiving the situation every day, striving to forgive every day. Okay? Here's your affirmation for today. I extend the same grace to others that I hope to receive. When I apologize, I do so fully. No buts, no excuses, just truth. My words and my actions align. I am growing in humility and courage every day.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dr. G Speaks podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and family. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Deuces.